Hello and welcome to the Parents Guide. This is where you'll find out what's going on in schools and hear some of the key issues being discussed from the parents' point of view. If you have school-aged children, this programme is for you. We'll be focusing on making progress in secondary schools with two parents, David Taylor and Catherine Kirkazoo.
Hello.
We're also joined by education consultant Christine Ryan.
Hello.
We've been looking at some programmes from Teachers TV and we'll be showing some extracts during our discussion. These programmes were made for teachers, but they also open up a window for parents to look into classrooms and see what's going on in schools today. The first programme looks at the very start of secondary school education and the sometimes traumatic transfer process from primary school. In this extract, we see pupils on the first day at Patcham High School in Brighton trying to find their way around the school.
Emily. You're there. Yes. Emily, you're there. I'd like to know, how many of you have done any form of woodwork? Has anybody used a hand saw before? Okay. On that, it's a picture of a workshop with a bunch of kids in there doing a random selection of dangerous things.
And I want you just to, each of you on your own, to just do a little cartoon or picture of what you think a typical scientist looks like, or what a typical scientist does. And on your picture, and don't spend too much time on it, do it quite quickly, okay? Do a little picture of what you think a scientist looks like, and on the picture, I want you to think of at least 5 good science words, other than the word science. If you can think of at least 5 other words that have something to do with science, put them on your picture as well.
We've found there's a deterioration in attitudes of children about work, particularly science and maths. Girls more in science, boys more in maths. The dips in attitude were much bigger with the brighter, the more able children. So it's those who aren't so academically able seem to enjoy school more. I mean, after all, they're making friends. They've learned how to cope with the teachers. The work isn't too demanding. But those who want more challenge, they're tending to feel that it's not exciting enough for them.
David, what did you feel about that clip? A successful first day at secondary school?
How I'd like my children to be treated is gently. It's a daunting experience from being the biggest fish in a small pond, which you would be in juniors, to moving to be a little fish in a small pond again. So if it can be softened by the teachers, setting the scene, setting the tone, to make it as comfortable as possible for the transition, then I'm all for it, and that's what I want my children to come back from after their first day at school, enthusiastic about it and not frightened to go into school.
Catherine, do you think it should be seen as a fresh start or as a sort of continuation of what they've already been doing, which is the most successful approach, do you think?
I think a lot of children like to regard it as a fresh start. Perhaps maybe they didn't enjoy their primary school, and therefore, especially if you're getting children from out of the area, I think it's nice that everybody regards it as a fresh start. If they've had problems before, if they've had friendship problems, coming to a new school where there are so many other new children, I think it's easier for them to start off on a good footing.
Christine, do you think that the transition from primary curriculum to secondary school is jagged, as it was described in the film, and that may make it difficult for the children?
Yes, it certainly can be. There are ways of managing it, but it's an interesting point about the fresh start, because I think socially the children like to feel that it's a fresh start, and it does give an opportunity to create new friendship groups and to welcome in people that you've not been with before. However, from the teacher's point of view, in terms of making it successful educationally, it's important that they don't view it as a fresh start, in the sense that these children are coming like blank slates, ready to begin the process again. Because what we do know is that if you take that approach, then children feel that the learning they've already done is undervalued.
Catherine, do you think that's difficult for teachers, though, who are teaching subjects that pupils haven't learnt before at primary school?
The teachers will find out, both from looking at the results from the junior school, but just getting to know the children, that hopefully, you know, in that way they'll be able to pick up and, you know, encourage those who do seem to be keen to learn.
Do you think it's different, Christine, for children suddenly to have a range of teaching styles thrust at them when they were used to only having one?
It is very different, and some schools really plan for this very, very carefully, and most schools have very good systems in place for helping children to cope with the big change. Because it's not just a range of subjects, as you say, it's getting used to different people, because many of them will have had the same teacher for virtually all of their subjects. That changes the dynamic of teaching. The teaching style is often very different for secondary pupils than it is in the junior setting. So there's a lot for children really to get used to, and most schools have thought that through now and have strategies in place to do it.
Well, now we're going to look at why boys underachieve compared with girls. We see Gary Wilson, the first school improvement officer in the UK to be responsible for raising boys' achievement, together with Denise Tonkin, acting head teacher of Colne Valley High School in West Yorkshire. But first we hear from one of the boys about why boys don't like reading.
As a whole, the younger generation today don't really read much because there's so much other things to do, like entertainment, like music and like going out and things, that reading's kind of a thing of the past.
Gary has come up with an innovative way of getting boys and girls to read that involves the whole school, teachers included.
Reading Week, what happens essentially is every half term there is one period in the day, each day in that week. So say it might be period one every day, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, the whole school reads. The whole school reads fiction or biography, because we're looking really at youngsters being able to see about creative writing rather than factual writing, which is often actually perceived as the sort of writing that appeals to boys, but it's fiction that they need to extend their creative writing.
I'm very strongly fixated on the idea of boys reading fiction, largely because it helps to develop their abilities to reflect. Boys' abilities to reflect are key in terms of their learning process.
It's really good because it's like girls read more because there's like these Jacqueline Wilson books, but boys don't tend to read, and if they read, like they read football books, and it really develops the boys' reading.
Well, I don't get time to read at home neither. I'll try to, but I'll always get distracted by something else. So on Reading Week, I'll get a chance to get a book finished.
Catherine, that was a very powerful image, wasn't it, all those children sitting there reading? Did you think it was a positive one?
I think once they've got a hold of one book and really enjoyed it, that then they're perhaps more interested and inclined to carry on. And especially if the school has a good library. Librarians can play such a big part in increasing, you know, children's love of literature.
But Christine, it's not just English, is it, that we see perpetually that boys are falling behind girls at all stages of the curriculum?
No.
I mean, why do you think that is?
No, and in fact, if anything, we've seen that situation getting worse in a lot of places as time has gone on, and it's a very complex picture. What we do know, what I know just from my own experience of going to schools in other countries, what we do know is that it isn't universal. It does seem to be a feature of developed social structures where there are lots and lots of distractions away from things that previously children would have used, reading books, playing games interactively with each other, where there are now all these other distractions, lots of entertainment available, all of those things. That seems to have a bigger impact on boys than it does on girls. It's one of the things we know is very important, and that's the involvement of fathers or other males, demonstrating that, in fact, for adult males, learning and being in that kind of situation is cool. It is what men do. It isn't just a female activity.
Did that come naturally to you then, David, getting involved in your son's learning in that way? I mean, did you take a conscious decision to do it?
Well, right from an early age, it became a habit anyway. I read, we all do reading from time to time, and it's just something that's been handed on. For Christmas, for instance, he's always, books have been included in the presents, and right through from birthdays, it's just seen as sort of a natural thing to do.
But we know that that's not true in all homes, and do you think there's more that parents could do, Catherine, to help combat this sort of anti-SWAT culture that exists? And could schools help parents to do that?
It isn't always books. As I said, they can learn just as much if they were reading, National Geographic or various magazines, and for boys to realise that they don't have to sit down, with a 500-page book, but just get used to reading a wider variety of material. I think that's what seems to come across. English teachers say, well, does he read newspapers? And you think, oh, well, no, I haven't thought of that. So it's variety.
I think an interesting thing here is if you just think about what material boys in particular are presented with to read in day-to-day environments. I was comparing the other day an Action Man toy from the 1970s, I suppose it would have been. The instructions in there for putting the whole thing together in interesting books we would regard now as very complex, and yet boys then coped with it very easily. We've tended to move towards make everything pictures, make things simpler, but the knock-on effect of that, of course, is that it does remove lots of opportunities for children to develop their skills more.
Do you think that's true, Catherine? Do you think schools have the whole society has changed so dramatically that these opportunities don't exist?
Yes, I thought it was interesting when the boy said, oh, I don't have time at home to read, and you think, well, you probably have. It's just that you choose to play on the computer or listen to your music. And I think it's up to parents to try and find a balance that, say to the child, well, why don't you just take, 15 minutes, half an hour and read a book, before you go to bed instead of staying on MSN or whatever. So unfortunately the responsibility is with the parents. As you say, if the parents aren't interested, then it falls back on the school.
We're going to look in a bit more detail now at technology, and in the next clip we visit Cooper's Technology College in Kent to see how their virtual learning environment addresses the needs of students and the unusual work patterns of teenagers.
The student view is available across the internet, and when they first enter they would log in and see all the classes that they are currently assigned to. When they go into their class they'll see any assignments that they've been sent by their teacher.
This is my page and it's Year 10 ABCE, and only people in my class can do it, only people in Year 10. If anyone else tried to log on they couldn't get in, and every lesson something's posted on here saying what we're going to do in the lesson.
I can set different pieces of work at different levels for different students in the class, and then they decide when and where they access that.
I have trouble writing because I'm slightly dyslexic, so it's a lot easier to go on to work that might be set on here because I've got the internet at home, so I'm going to take it straight away from there, go and do this, answer the questions, send it off to the teacher, not worry about it.
And we've discovered that children actually are logging on and doing work at some bizarre times, which how adolescents work. So you've got pieces of work returned at 2 o'clock in the morning. You've got a piece of work that's been released for a half-term holiday assignment, returned on a Sunday.
It's a 24-hour classroom. It really is available to them. We quite often get girls logging on early morning. Boys tend to be logging on late at night rather than early morning.
David, did you think that was a positive way for young people to learn?
Yes, certainly. I'm all for it. Most families that I know, they've got a computer in the house, so let's make the use of it. There's computers, right, I've got a 5-year-old who's just started primary school. He's got, there's 2 computers in their classroom, so it's a piece of stationery nowadays. Let's make the use of it. Make sure though that the work you are collecting is going to be used used properly.
Does it worry you though, the thought that they might be on a computer all day at school and then all night at home?
Not so much, provided they have sort of natural breaks, I think, and you can monitor what they're doing as well. I think it's a good thing. It's a fact of life that is with us now, computers. So I'm not frightened about it. It's the same at work. You've got computers in your everyday life.
Christine, I mean, it looks superficially attractive, doesn't it? It looks like they're all learning, they're involved. Is there a downside to doing everything online?
Well, it's as with anything, really. There are pluses and minuses. Certainly there are lots of pluses in terms of motivating children, at least initially. And it provides a tremendous opportunity for parents to be much more involved in what's going on with their child's work. Some schools have put their entire curriculum on internet access, so parents can look specifically at what children will be studying for the rest of the year, know what homeworks are due today, and so on and so forth. So that's all very positive. There is a welfare issue, obviously, that we do have to be mindful of, which is, are the children using these too much? And of course you do always have to build in for those children actually who don't have those resources at home.
Catherine, do you think that there's a danger that some parents might sort of fall behind if the onus was on the homeschool relationship to keep this online work going on because they couldn't understand the levels of technology?
I was going to say, we assumed that because there are computers all around these days that everybody's going to be au fait with being able to look up how their child's getting on, but I should think for quite a few parents it's the sort of, well, how do I go about it? So again, it falls back, unfortunately, onto the school to actually offer training to the parents so that they feel confident enough that they can say to their child, oh, let me just see what you're supposed to be doing today. So you've got to build up the parents' confidence in using the equipment and all the software as well as the children.
But, I mean, you're obviously a family that loves books. Does it worry you, the idea that in the end there may be no books, that it may all be done online?
No, I see the benefits of, students, especially boys, where they were giving them specific targets, like if you do this piece of coursework it will give you so many points. I think when we were talking about improving boys' achievement, that giving them set targets and they know exactly what they've got to do, I think that's very beneficial.
Well, now we're going to look at another new development in schools, personalised teaching and learning. In the clip, we join St Bonaventure's School, where teacher Mark Anthony is leading a pilot scheme to identify different students' learning styles. And advanced skills teacher Sue Pritchard is using the information in her Year 10 German class.
The questionnaire that we use is a series of statements which the students either agreed with or disagreed with. And then, depending upon the number of agreements, we categorise them into a different learning style. For example, I like to get involved in physical activities. That's quite clearly a kinesthetic statement. I like to learning by watching films and videos is clearly visual. Each pupil in Year 7 and Year 10 has a score for each learning style. So they have a score for kinesthetic learning, for auditory learning and for visual learning. The scores put in on a database which is made available to staff who can then use this to focus their teaching styles for particular classes.
Das Bild ist sehr gut. Das Bild ist sehr groß, sagt man, ja? Das Bild ist groß oder das Bild ist klein, Bradley? Das Bild ist groß oder klein? Groß. The vast majority of my class, with the exception of 2, are visual and kinesthetic learners. Berühmte Fußballspieler gut. So it means that therefore I try to ensure that my lesson appeals to those type of learners. Bild ist, was ist Bild?
Bild ist picture.
Picture, genau. What's the word order after? I tend to use more kinesthetic methods with slightly lower ability or slightly less motivated kids. Some of my most able kids in this class are actually kinesthetic learners as well. So that kind of contradicts my assumptions, really.
Ansage is sehr gut.
Catherine, very interesting concepts, but as a parent, did you feel you understood the different learning styles that the teacher was talking about?
I don't think as a parent we actually think, oh yes, my child's auditory or my child's visual, but it seems if it helps with their actually learning, then I think it's very good that they do actually find out the best way.
But do you think the parents would need to know then? Or is that just one piece of information too much?
I think as long as the teachers are happy that they feel they're getting the most out of the child, then whichever method they use for teaching that brings out the best in them, that's fine. I'm not really bothered whether my child's visual or not. As I say, if they're working to their full capacity, then that's great.
David, do you want to know if your son is a kinesthetic learner or not?
While watching that clip, it was certainly useful, and my mind was thinking, well, which type of learner are my children? One's a kinesthetic learner, another's a visual learner. So yeah, it's all relative, really. You know, one of them will like reading, and you know, for instructions, the other one has to be shown. For instance, with Lego, you know, they have to be shown how it works rather than reading the instructions, and eventually they get the hang of it. So whatever helps them get past their exams and, you know, pass the next exam along from them, yeah, I'm all for it.
Could you give us a brief interpretation of the three different styles, do you think?
I think the important thing about it is that it highlights that teaching, especially to a group of children, should include a good blend of different approaches to the work. So the kinesthetic, the hands-on approach, essentially, the learning by doing, the auditory, that they have spoken instructions, that there is an opportunity to interact by discussion. The visual is an obvious one, you know, that they can take information either from the written word, from pictures, from other kinds of visual stimuli. So it's really just to let the children in on that secret, as it were, let them have some idea of, you know, what is your preferred learning style. You might want to try approaching your work in this way if you're finding, say, reading difficult. It's not a failing in you, it's you have a different preferred learning style, so you might need to make more effort for things that are written than you would need to do for things that are, you know, practical subjects.
I mean, this type of teaching obviously demands quite a high quality of a teacher, doesn't it, to balance the three? Do you think parents have a right to expect that they'll have a teacher who does know how to balance all these different learning styles together?
Well, I think so. I think it is part of the skill of teaching, is finding ways that you can engage all your pupils. But we do have to be realistic. You know, it is all part of teacher workload. Lots of schools, though, are doing this very successfully, and often it's emerged from what used to be their special needs departments, where this kind of activity, of course, is already very well established. And it's just spreading that very effective practice further out, really, into the curriculum.
OK, well, our final clip comes from an area in Warwickshire where many young people are from first or second generation unemployed families. How can schools respond to this kind of situation? Here, Alderman Smith Comprehensive School is piloting a unique project for 14 to 16-year-olds, taking students onto a building site for vocational training in the construction trades.
Now what you want to do, cut the end off that so that you've got a nice clean edge. You don't want a burr on the end of it. We have got a few of the apprentices who've obviously finished their schooling, they've been through and passed all their GCSEs and whatnot, and then come along and they haven't got simple skills like using a saw. They'll end up wrestling with it and really struggle. So I think it's a good idea to learn it while they're still at an early age and they still can.
Get in positions like this. Let's protect the sides there. Here's a bit of timber, okay?
Alderman Smith student Jason Ward is mastering the art of tongue and groove flooring. The practical training from very experienced craftsmen is informal and is very similar to how apprentices used to be taught. The NVQ course requires student skills to be assessed in the workplace, which for these students is the Lovell building site.
The lads that we've had on this year 10 and moving on to this site, you can see they've grown in maturity, they've grown in their social skills, they're more confident, they can talk to people out on the site, they can actually relate to the trades on the site.
Catherine, do you think 14 to 16 is too young to be on a building site?
I don't think so, no. If the child's turned off from school but would like to look at where they're going in the future, then I think it's great that if you can offer them the opportunity to actually get experience of what it is like out in the big bad world, I'm all for it.
David, you left school at 16 to do an apprenticeship. Do you think 14 is just maybe a bit too young?
No, I don't think so. I think if that clip goes on to say if they're one or two generations of unemployed people in their families, then it's unlikely that they're going to be going on to sixth form college and universities themselves. So while they've got that discipline of sitting in the classrooms, if the benefits of that, such as teaching them health and safety, in conjunction with going out to teaching them at 14, then that will be good. You know, I did leave and started an apprenticeship at 16, but I was working at 14.
But do you think this is as aspirant as wanting to go to university, learning a practical skill?
There's two ways of an education. There's really an academic approach, a traditional academic approach, and then there's a vocational approach. You know, both can be combined, or they can go their separate ways.
Christine, not many girls on the building site, I noticed. Do you think, again, there's a danger of early pigeonholing children who don't seem to be achieving, or send them off to the building site?
There is a danger, but I think schools are very aware of that danger. I mean, I agree entirely with everything that's been said here. It's very important to consult parents, because at the end of the day, they know their children best. But it is also true that for a significant minority of children, once they reach about the age of 14, school really doesn't feel appropriate for them. It's very difficult for it to overcome some of their barriers to learning. And for many of these children, opportunities like this are the first time that they can remember feeling really successful at something. And you've taken them out of that often that peer pressure group where they're afraid to appear to perform. You're putting them with other adults in a real work situation. And they come on leaps and bounds, these children. And it then has an impact, a very positive impact, on their more academic work, if you like.
Catherine, do you think, given all that there's enough status attached to vocational qualifications now in school, or is it still too academic?
I think it's more society's perception. Unfortunately, we still do seem very achievement-led as regards how many GCSEs or A-levels and what grades you get. But I think people have just got to be aware that that's not the real world, that, there is a great need for vocational type jobs. And I think that, if we can get our young people that are interested learning and going out and meeting other adults and experience what real life's going to be like, then I'm all for it. And I know in the clip we talked about the diploma, and that would have accredited vocational courses as highly as academic, and I think we do need to do that.
Well, I think most parents would probably agree with that comment, but we have to end it there. You can have your say, though, by emailing parents@teachers.tv, and you can find all the information about programmes you have seen and more on our website at Teachers TV. Details at the end of the programme. Thanks to my guests, Christine, David and Catherine.
Bye.
Bye. And from myself, Fiona Millar, thanks for joining us, and until next time, goodbye.